Welcome to the Fantastic Comic Fan Podcast. Today, I am welcoming back for God knows how many times Ross from Stop Let's Team Up. This is going out with the History Podcast. We are going to be talking this time around about Infantino, his work, his comic books. You'll find a link at the website to go to the comic history website. It's called Comics Fantastic History. And it is a rebroadcast. It's one of the best shows we did last summer for Carmine Infantino as publisher of DC Comics back in the 70s. So, Ross, how have you been? What's up with your podcast?
I've been good. Podcast is going good. I've got it on schedule. I've been very busy working some weeks. Getting an Opal City out. There's some plans for a special Opal City confidential episode coming up sometime during this year. It's going to be a little more complicated, and I think be fun for everybody.
Carmine, I don't think in today's comic book market and fandom gets as much credit as he deserves as a creator.
No, I think he's respected. Everybody knows the big things he's did. I think a lot of people don't know all the other stuff he did. It is long and vast and varied, like most of his generation. But I just think it's like people like a whole generation just didn't see him or saw him as the old-timey artist. And I think people have to come and rediscover him.
In 1985, to commemorate the 50th anniversary of DC Comics, DC did a 50 who made DC great. And of course, he was included in Jeanette Kahn, who was the publisher who actually replaced him back in the 70s. She sent this note: "No one deserves this honor more than you. Thank you for all you've done for DC and the industry." And that's true, but he did so many things for comic books. When Julius Schwartz was asked back in the 90s, what was the best thing he did for DC? Schwartz's response was, everything he did was best for DC. And we talked about that in the other podcast in the history. That Ken was very much a company man, and he did what he was told, and he really had DC, the creators and the comic books and the whole thing really seriously at heart.
I think as an editor, he was very good. And the reason he didn't continue as publisher was because the industry was changing. And it wasn't that he didn't, like you said, he was a company man. He was looking at the art and how am I going to get it to the market, to the fans. He was in charge of Julie Schwartz, and I can't think of the big third one, that he could corral them and still run the company. He also, that I think he was good at, because Julie's books were Julie's books. He got what he wanted. And then he had Murray Boltinoff. He's like, Murray, just do whatever. Murray didn't care about rules or continuity. His books were great. He allowed his editors to curate artists and writers to adapt. It's always changing. You can tell how much the industry is changing by how it changes. If you go far enough back, you're like, wow, okay, the different books he did are all very different and they look different.
Back in the 70s, there was no comic book shops, there was no direct distribution, and basically Marvel and DC were in this war to try to get newsstand space. And basically they walked into the office and said, you lost us too much money, and that's how he lost his job. You know,
that wasn't his fault. Yeah, it would have been harder for him later because direct market is.
Yes. And
depending if you were in an urban area, the convention stuff that started in like the mid 60s, a decade later, mom and pop, there's some of the people went, I can buy them. And then I don't know when Diamond started, or I guess it would have been
sometime in 80s.
80.
Carmine felt like he got shafted by DC and betrayed, and it affected him the rest of his career. His heart was really not into creating comics. He still produced great work, because heart just was never into it after getting screwed by DC.
Looking back in the past, you can see it, and it looked great. And I think sometimes he was putting out a lot of stuff. It was odd. And as a kid, I didn't really like it. But it's one of those things where I went back.
It became an acquired taste.
But I also went back going, you did this back then. I think some of the writing he wasn't given. I'm of a generation to where I was alive when he was doing all that Batman, but I didn't read it because I didn't start reading comics till 72. So I was just too little. I'm a huge fan of his Elongated Man and his Adam Strange. I've read the big issues of his run in Batman, but it's not something I read regularly. Him and his early Flash and Elongated Man and Adam Strange were my but he did them all good.
The Legends book, it has his first appearance as an artist, and it has so much stuff in it. He's one of the few artists that really changed and evolved over the decades. If you look at 40s Carmine, 60s and 70s, you see a progression of change in his comic books and his art style.
You do. What I like is when you see his art in different titles in the Golden Age, when he's doing most of the All-Star, he's one of the artists who did All-Star when it became just a single storybook. You see that, and then you see his Flash when he's doing the Atom, when he's taking over the Atom art. It is definitely heavily inked to look more like the original artist that he's replaced. He's very strategic in what he draws.
When he did Barry Allen, he specifically designed and made him look to be more streamlined. He had no interest in it at all, and they basically just said, well, here's the assignment, go with it. And that's in the Legends of the DC Universe. It's a great book. It's over 400 pages, and you get a sample of all kinds of genres. There's Westerns, there's romance, there's science
Lady
fiction.
Detective?
Lady Detective.
I love that they had a Lady Detective. It was gorgeous, too. It was newspaper comic strip quality in that era, because I do judge it, because sometimes the news strip guys were better, less rushed. Does that make sense? A lot of Golden Age, early Golden Age art, you have to go, these guys were knocking out 3 pages a day.
His first appearance as an artist was also the first appearance of Black Canary, which some fans don't know now that Black Canary is in the big thing, but that was in Flash Comics 86 in 1947. It was one of the first female superheroes that kind of had an ongoing. Black Canary was big back into the 50s.
Oh, yeah. And it's gorgeous. I always see, when I think back of this and I remember it, some of these, actually the JSA, the All-Star comic one in here was one of those ones that was reprinted in the 70s in the 100-page Giants. I always thought it was Alex Toth, and my brother went, no, that's the guy that draws the Flash. I went, what the? That's this guy that's doing
completely different art style. And even if you look at the Westerns and the romance and the crime, it's different with. You also get him drawing Golden Age Green Lantern. So you get a really big selection of his work from the beginning of his career through the 80s, all types of genres.
I know you don't follow the trade news, but with this DC Finest series, they're making sure that they're having horror. And because they're not doing just, this is only our army. War will be, they'll take a 6-month period. It'll be every war comic they published in publication order in that volume. Because that's what they're doing with the team up. So I've got Brave and the Bold at DC Comics Presents in 1 volume in the order which they came out.
Because that's always been my crux. Like the early Neil Adams, he did war stories. I'd like to see that come out as a trade. Even with Marvel, I always talk about Millie the Model and Stan Goldberg. It's like before the Marvel Age of Superheroes, it was the Westerns and the romance, the Millie the Model who went from the Golden Age to the Bronze Age. That was Marvel's bread and butter before the heroes came out. I'd like to see better representation of some of this legacy stuff. But anyways, back to Infantino. There's another strange collection that DC put out, which was the Detective Chimp trade.
I almost bought that when I saw it was coming out, but it came out on the app.
I am so surprised that DC put out such an obscure title.
I think I know why they did it. For people like me who love the modern Detective Chimp, he was part of Justice League Dark.
Probably.
He's a great character. He is great. And that's why I was interested in him. Oh, it's early 60s, which I love. I love his Flash, and I love the weird stuff he did, like Detective Chimp and other things. But I started to read it on the app. I went, I don't think these things were meant to be read in a huge bunch, because they're so fun and silly and still a detective story.
Yep. They were put in the Adventures as a backup story in the Adventures of Rex the Wonder Dog. I actually like Rex the Wonder Dog.
The era before, the giant typewriters, silly Batman fights. I love that era. I absolutely adore it. So that, especially when he has the damn dog.
I see Rex the Wonder Dog somewhere again in present. But it ran from issues 4 through 46 of, now think about this, Adventures of Rex the Wonder Dog ran for almost 50 issues. From 1952 through 1959, it was his first time that Carmine inked his work for Julius Schwartz. And Julius Schwartz hated his inking and would very seldom let him ink his own work.
Really? I think it looks good.
I liked the Detective Chimp, and that was, I also found it funny that out of everything that he did and draw, Detective Chimp was his favorite series he ever did. Because it was
I
funny.
got to ask the question, did he start the monkey craze?
You know what? I'm not sure. For newer fans who don't realize this, back in the day, whenever DC put a monkey on the cover and purple, the color purple, those comic books sold like hotcakes. So everybody, and in fact, it got so bad that they had to limit the monkeys on the covers because they had, for some weird fluke, you put a monkey, a gorilla, like they had the super ape, you put a monkey on that cover, and them things sold like hotcakes.
And also, those DC Finest trades, one of their DC Finest science fiction is what they're calling it, is going to have a gorilla volume, and it's all the gorilla stuff.
Oh, I see. I need to keep up on the trade stuff.
They're nice price point. They're 500 pages. They're thin, and the mapping is great. Like Suicide Squad, you have all the stuff that leads up to Ostrander's thing.
I have not looked at those things.
They're great. They put out 2 volumes All-Star already, and they'll have both all of the Silver Age Doom Patrol plus any team ups they were in 2 volumes, and they're just doing a good job. I think they've improved the app for the most part, so I can find things like Karma. I have a book I can go read the DC Universe books, because I have the Lynn Wine one. There's a Brian, and it was neat to go through this one because I could see. I'm interested in reading the first 2/3 of it because I've read the All-Star, but to read that Black Canary, to read the Lady Detective, I just thumbed through it. His art is just stunning.
Yes. I didn't give you any background information, but after he stopped being publisher, he went to Marvel for a few years. Do you have any comments about some of his Marvel work?
Yeah, I was a tween and a teenager when he was drawing Star Wars, and I hated it. I didn't get it. I go back now and I'm like, oh man, this stuff's really good. This is really good. And again, it didn't look like his Flash.
No.
It didn't look like his superhero. It's very energetic. I like to say energetic. His people are moving. They're fluid. They may not be anatomically correct, but it works.
He also drew for a time the original Spider-Woman first series back in the Bronze Age.
I think that's some of the best art he had. Because I think that, and what was the other one he did? The Shroud?
The Spider-Woman series back then was more kind of spooky, dealing with the more spooky stuff. And his art complemented, because you had the Brother Grimm, Shroud, Werewolf by Night was in it a few times, but it was really his art really complemented that stuff.
He created the Brother Grimm. They're great villains.
Yes.
I love Golden Age comics, but I don't always love Golden Age art.
Yes. Yeah. It's an acquired taste.
You have to go back in time in your head, but this is why they're doing it. His is a step above. It's like him and Toth are that next level.
And if you read into context,
Kubert.
If you read it in the context of the time, some of those Golden Age and Silver Age stories are actually pretty good if you take the time. Do you have any other comments about Carmine throughout the years?
I enjoy seeing some of his older work, and I'm appreciative of what he really did. I hope he was in the top 25.
When the Comic Buyers Guide did a poll back in 2000, and I believe him and Jack Kirby were noted as being the best artists of the century, the top 2. That's what I remember. But the last trade I wanted to talk about was the Batman trade, which was the Tales of the Batman, Carmine Infantino. It has his first Batman story in it, and it also has his last work that he did with DC Comics. And what's funny is that before the Batman craze with the Batman TV show, Batman was like this close to getting canceled back in the 60s. And they basically told them, you got 6 months to turn this ship around, or we're going to cancel Batman. Did you like the new look when they started that?
No, because I got it. I came to it later, because the first Batman I really read was Jim Aparo Batman and stuff like that, early 70s. But my brother had some of these, and he would go, here's the first Batgirl, or when they were reprinted, I'd read them. His Batman's okay. It's not my favorite Batman.
Did he co-create Batgirl, the Barbara Gordon version?
I find him better suited for, say, Flash, either version, silver or golden, than he is for Batman. But I enjoyed this Elongated Man one. I really enjoyed, because I love his Elongated Man.
towards the end of the Barry Allen Flash, when they just ran him into the road with the trial of the Flash, Carmine went back and drew the Flash for the last few years. And
I found it very hard to read that comic.
it's not necessarily the writer's fault, because they basically said, just run this into the ground because we're killing Barry anyways during the Crisis event. There's no sense of starting a storyline. He did a few of the Brave and the Bold back in the early 80s when Jerry Conway was writing some of it, and Jerry Conway co-created Firestorm, and he was looking right and left to throw Firestorm into everything. He added him to the Justice League. He added him to DC Comics Presents. And in the issue of Brave and the Bold 172 is a Jerry Conway story with Batman and Firestorm, and Infantino also drew that issue. What else do you think about the later Batman that he drew, like in the 80s?
It was okay. I think the best piece I saw was that final piece he did.
And that was written as a dedication to Julius Schwartz.
Yeah, it read like a Julie Schwartz story for sure.
Yep.
But the artist, it looks like him and several art inkers.
The inks were by Joe Giella. And it was written by Jeff Johns.
Yeah, that was weird. I saw that. It was middle of him doing Justice Society.
He stopped doing Batman back in the late 60s. And it wasn't until the early 80s that he started hearing some Batman. But again, I don't think, even with the Batman later, that his heart really felt like he was into it.
I think he was just working to pay the bills. And be honest, that Flash story, I think, was not something a teenage boy wanted to read, especially when you had flashy, new, shiny things like new X-Men and new Teen Titans, and Levitt's Legion is starting around that. I had other things, shinier, prettier things.
Before we wrap this up, give me 3 reasons why newer fans should check out Carmine's work.
His Elongated Man, his Adam Strange, and I would say his later Golden Age stuff that he did, like the All-Star Comics and stuff like that, because I think his 40s stuff this book has made me go, I got to find more of it. His Batman, you've read a Batman, but I think you need to see him do his science fiction. You need to see him do that quirky Elongated Man character. It's humorous, and his Golden Age stuff is freaking gorgeous. And those later All-Stars in that Black Canary stuff, the writing's better too. Him and John Broome were a good team.
Thanks for joining me. Ross, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, sir.